Well, with us now is Andrew Wilson, who's author of Alexander McQueen, Blood Beneath the Skin, and Amber Graafland, who's the fashion director for the Daily Mirror. Welcome to you both. Andrew, McQueen was never short of headlines during his lifetime, but what struck me looking at your book is how little we actually knew about the man during his lifetime, and in particular, his darker side. To what extent was that the man himself, and to what extent was he shaped by the environment he worked in?
Well, he was one of those characters who was very much an enigma. He was a very private person. He kept lots of dark secrets. So even though he would go out into the world and, as you say, quite rightly, generate these extraordinary headlines, there were very, very few people who knew him. So I worked very, very closely with his family to build up a picture of this very complex individual. And obviously the material was very, very dark at times. But fortunately, the family have read the book, they support the book, even though it contains some quite difficult material.
And we've seen some shots there of some of his shows. To what extent did that character shape his designs, do you think? Because, of course, a lot of them were very controversial.
Well, I think he saw beauty in the grotesque, and I think if you look at the title of the exhibition, Savage Beauty, he was very inspired by nature, and you saw the beauty of nature in his work, but you also saw the wild savagery of nature, and I think that was the two sides to his character that came through in his work, and I think sometimes, although his shows were spectacular, sometimes they were dark.
I mean, you know, Jack the Ripper, Highland Rape, names of some of his collections. I mean, is that because sort of fashion has gone beyond being pretty, if you like, and it has to be shocking and almost unpleasant in some ways?
I don't think it has to be. I think if you look at most successful designers, they are just presenting beautiful wearable clothes. I think where Alexander McQueen was different was that his work was, it wasn't just fashion, it went beyond fashion, it was art. And I think he was presenting something that went beyond just presenting beautiful clothes. Is that the point,
you know, and we've had heroin chic elsewhere and all the rest of it, is that the point that if you want to claim to be an artist, you've got to, as it were, be slightly sick?
I don't think he had that level of self-consciousness. This really was his personality. He always said his collections were very autobiographical, and a great deal of his life was very, very dark. He had some very traumatic childhood experiences that shaped him for the rest of his life.
Such as?
When he was 9 or 10, he started to be sexually abused by his brother-in-law, the same man who beat up his elder sister. So I talk about in the book how, from that moment onwards, he wanted to try to, you know, construct a form of psychological armour, if you like, a way that he could protect his sister and women in general. You know, he said, I always want women to be afraid. I want people to be afraid of the women I dress. You know, he wanted people to be quite startled and scared of these creations.
But did that make him stand out? Or are there other, you know, the designers we think of as being creative geniuses? You talked there about creating beautiful clothes, but the ones we really sit up and watch, do they have similarly sort of damaged backgrounds or things that kind of propel them? Well,
it's the kind of tortured genius argument, I guess, isn't it? There is, if you look at many artists, that they have a dark side to their character, and he was undeniably a genius. And you could argue, is that these two things come hand in hand? Do you have to kind of have that edge to your personality in order to be that creative?
And yet, although this is part of the art, I understand that Victoria and Albert didn't want your book associated with it. They won't sell it in their shop.
Apparently, yes. So they ordered 600 copies, and then I heard the order was cancelled.
You don't know why?
I don't know why, for what reason. My suspicion is that McQueen, the company, want to distance themselves from McQueen, the man.
Does that take away from, you know, from McQueen the man, then, and the exhibition, because that kind of sanitises it in a way, doesn't it?
I don't think they've sold 70,000 tickets because, well, the reason they've sold 70,000... apparently they've sold 70,000 tickets already, and I think that's because of the person, and that's because of the story that we're discussing here now. I think if you take that away, you wouldn't have sold all those tickets.
Well, 70,000 people are going to see this now, so what is his legacy to the fashion world?
Oh, his legacy. I think he pushed boundaries. I think the fact that, this point I've already made, that he saw beauty in the grotesque. I think we kind of look at the dark side to his character, the light side to his character, but actually he blurred those boundaries. And I think that's his legacy.
What do you reckon, Andrew Wilson? Will we still be talking about him in 20 years' time?
I think he completely changed the silhouette. So the reason why people talk about him in terms of fashion is because he lowered the waistline. You know, these things called bumpsters, and that sort of went right down to the high street, and all the young kids around the world were wearing very low-slung jeans and trousers, and he was responsible for that, for good or ill.
For that, but
yes.
Away from that, I mean, has the fashion world exploited the damaged genius that was McQueen, though, ultimately?
Well, I think, actually, they're trying to pull away from that. So I think there's a bit of I think he started out
trying to have their cake and eat it, in as much as
exactly.
He had the pain and the genius, and they just want to keep the genius and forget the pain.
When he started out, he was the enfant terrible of the fashion world, and then he became one of them. He was embraced by them, he became one of them. And now they may be trying to change the story a little bit.
But how do you change the story from here, then?
Well, by only talking about certain elements and forgetting other elements to the story. But it's, the reason why people are going to see the exhibition is because of his life and what he achieved and where he came from.
I mean, generally speaking, though, is there pressure from the fashion world, on people like this? I mean, are they exploiting designers?
There's an incredible amount of pressure. In 1996, when he became designer-in-chief at Givenchy, suddenly he wasn't just designing his own collection, he wasn't just doing two a year, he was doing the pret-a-porter shows as well. That's 4 collections a year. Suddenly you have all these people working for you. Everybody is relying on you to come up with an amazing show every time.
A lot of money goes with it, doesn't it?
And
it's a huge business. You know, it's a multi-million-pound brand now. So there are certain vested interests at stake here.
as we all know, you can be out of fashion overnight.
Of course.
OK, thank you both very much.